All right, Bray, I'm going to get started today. First off, thank you guys so much for coming in. As people continue to come in, please let me know where you're coming in from. Your names, introduce yourselves, share this out to whoever you can, whoever you think would be interested. So my name is Chris Alicia. I am a teacher on Awake TV network, doing a show on how to determine your divine blueprint. But that's not what I'm here for today. Today, I'm here to heal through my own story. I have spent a lot of time in introspection in the spiritual world, trying to really come to terms with some of the things that I've experienced in my life, some of the pain that I've gone through, some of the scar tissue that I've developed. I've spent a ton of time and money and energy on moving past these things, uncovering them, really getting into what caused that pain, how to release it, how to heal it. And I have come light years from where I was even 5 years ago, but there's a piece of my story that I have not shared with anybody other than my father, quite frankly, and my husband, who was there for most of it. And that's about my time in the government after joining the military. And what I experienced there, really going head to head with a male dominant system that robbed me of my career, it robbed me of my reputation, it robbed me of my will to live for a very, very long time. So what I'm going to do today is allow you to, I want you to be here and witness with me my own healing from this. I'm going to share with you my story, and in doing so, show you how I show up for myself, how I heal myself from this pain and trauma that I've collected over my lifetime. And I want this to be an interactive experience. I want you to really go inside while I'm sharing this story and see what resonates with you. See if it triggers any memories or experiences in your life, things that you've gone through, struggles that you've gone through. And at the end of this, if you are willing to go into that space, which is dark and scary, then you will have an emotional release at the end of this event, just as I will. We're going to go through this together and release some trauma together today. So if that sounds okay for everybody who's watching, I like the heart bubbles. Those are my favorite. So if you could just heart bubble the crap out of my screen, I'll know we're all ready to begin. And we have some friends on here from high school that I have not seen in forever. So welcome. That is crazy because I was not a very spiritual person in high school. So, to start off with just a quick bit of my overall background before I really get into the story that I want to heal today. So I grew up in Maryland. When I was growing up and I was very young, I had a very close relationship to my mother. I was much closer to my mother than I was to my father. But when I was around 12, 13, my mother started drinking very heavily, and she got into different types of drugs. So the woman that I had loved, like my very best friend, I mean, we would sit on the couch and watch Star Trek marathons, the Next Generation marathons, for hours. The woman that I had loved shifted, and all of a sudden she was replaced with this woman that I did not know, I didn't understand. The cruelty that she wanted to inflict on me was so foreign. It was such a foreign concept, and it was like a light switch had been turned off. And I kept, the abuse story is one that I've dealt with a long time. But during that time period, especially with a younger sister, I realized that it was my mission in life to protect my sister from what it was that was just violent and vicious about our mother. And that need to protect really stayed with me throughout high school, throughout later years. But I was so dark and deep in the depression of why my mother all of a sudden didn't love me, why this woman who was my best friend couldn't look at me without cursing me, why she would throw me up against the wall and strangle me. I just could not grasp what had happened. So I went really deep into depression and started just sleeping all of the time. And I would say my freshman to my junior in high school, I slept anytime I wasn't in school. I slept for hours and hours and hours. And it took me a long time to come out of that depression. And I actually have my sister to thank for that. Although she's a terrible, terrible influence at the time, she was the cool one. She was the one that was going out and partying and drinking, and she had all these great friends. So she really forced me to come out of this depression that I was in and start looking around the world. And at some point, I knew it was time for me to do what I'd always wanted to do growing up. And that was to go back to be that protector. I had told my family when I was a kid, I was going to be a firefighter, a police officer, or a soldier. Those are the only three things I wanted to do. I had to serve in some way, shape, or form. Now, that depression really knocked me out of that. For years, I did not think of anything but my pain for a very long time. I had no aspirations to go to school. I had no aspirations to do anything, but maybe party occasionally with my friends. So finally, after a very strongly worded come to Jesus with my father, I realized it was time. It was time for me to get out and to join the military. Now, that was by far probably the scariest decision I've ever made in my life, to join the military. And I want you to imagine this process. So you go to this building and you take a personality test in this building, and then you take a physical test, and then they do all sorts of exams where you do duck walks across the floor, and they're measuring your flexibility. And they don't tell you any of the results of any of these tests. You're just going there hoping that you can join the military. It is such a overwhelming experience. You have no guarantee in your job. You have nothing. Once I picked my job, I had to wait another 8 months before I could leave, because the job I wanted was unique. It was an engineering job. It was very rare. And all the slots were filled. It was a small group of people that could get in. So I had to go back home for another 8 months and wait to leave for the military. And I remember I was a smoker at the time. Leaving to go on a plane to the military, trying to smoke as many cigarettes as I possibly could before I got onto this plane, because I just knew I was going to have to quit. As soon as I hit the ground, I wasn't allowed to smoke anymore. So the military was a very interesting experience for me. My classmates for this tech career that I was in were all male. Now, I'd always had male friends growing up. That was just who I resonated with. I've always found myself to be more masculine. I played a lot of sports. I just never really had a whole lot of girlfriends. And it always made me feel very much like an outsider. And I don't know if there's any other high school tomboys in here, but if you are, give me a shout out, because it's not an easy way to go through high school. So when I finally went into the military, and now I'm surrounded by all of these males, oddly enough, I finally found a place that I belonged to. It was the first time that I felt worthy. I was in a class that I was in a career that I was good at. I was in a group that I could lead. And everything started to click into place. And I realized that I had been made to do this. I had been made to serve my country. I had been made to go to the military. And all that masculinity, all the depression, all of those things that I went through in high school had really helped. It was like it fell away. It was another person. This was a chapter of my life that I didn't have to look back on the same way that I used to. So during my time in the military, I learned very quickly that men and women in the military were not not completely created equally, certainly not treated equally. I had to, well, what I felt I had to do, I felt that I had to fight every single day to get the same ounce of respect that the males did. And it made me come across as abrasive a lot of times. I could be very, very intense. And if Rico is still watching this, he was one of the airmen that I trained in the military. And I know I was intense with him. And what was so hard for them to understand, and it was hard for me to understand as well at the time, was I felt so much pressure to prove my worth in this field that I was extreme. I felt I had to go 110 all the time. There were no exceptions. I had to be the best at everything. So that caused a lot of health problems for me in the military, and I had some headbutting as well, especially with the women that I did work with. We did not get along at all. And what I realized with the women in the military, especially in these more male-dominated fields, was there's a sense of lack for us. It's almost as if there's only so much respect to go around for women. And you have to fight tooth and nail, to get that respect. And heaven forbid one woman in your squadron does something wrong, because all of the women will all of a sudden be sucked into this mold. For example, there was this, during one of the deployments, a woman who, I guess she was married, was having an affair with another soldier. Now, that escalated so quickly that women were no longer allowed to enter that part of the base, because apparently all women are doing this at the same time. It's such a toxic environment for women to grow into their maturity in, because now you're lumped up with all other women. It makes you hate on other women. It makes you incredibly judgmental of other women, because you know that their actions are going to reflect onto you. Their being really good at a job is going to negate your being really good at a job, because it seems like there's only so much praise that can go around for women. And I don't know if the men felt the same way. And it's a shame that we always talk about women not being supportive enough of each other. And this was a huge problem in the military. So when I got out of the military, I joined the government as a civilian. So what this means is, instead of wearing a uniform, I was still serving my country, but I was serving the bigger Department of Defense. So I went from the military right into this other position as a government employee. And I thought, I left the military because I had a very hard time following orders that I didn't agree with. I had a very, very hard time following people that I didn't respect, and that I didn't think were doing the right thing. And like I said, I was very aggressive at this time. So if you were messing up on the job, or you were asking me to do something that I knew was wrong, we were going to go head to head about it. And I had no qualms about this at all. So I got out of the military and joined the government, thinking that the government was, gentler is not the right word, closer to the front line. And what I mean by this was, in the military, especially in the Air Force, I was in a supportive role. So I never felt really involved in what was going on in the world. You know, I had joined the military to protect my country, and I still didn't feel like I was doing that. So when I was offered a job with the government, I thought this was my chance to really serve at a much higher level. I was going to be able to understand things, see things, do things that most of the world cannot fathom. So I was super, super excited to join the government as a civilian. And once again, I found myself in a male-dominated field. And I took so much pride in that. It's like, look, they're hiring a woman. I am a badass female. They're hiring me. They don't do that with many females. But I constantly, I could not understand what the Department of Defense was like on the inside. I hadn't experienced anyone coming out of there that could tell me some of the pitfalls that I was going to experience by joining the government. And my dad had worked for the Department of Energy, so I had seen his career and I had heard his stories, and his stories were nothing like what I saw in DOD. So when I joined the military, or I'm sorry, joined the government, there's a ton of training that goes into it, a ton of different elements that go into getting you prepared for your job. So I had gone through, when I first got hired, I went through maybe a year of different training events. Now, as soon as I got assigned to my first office to do this job, I got diagnosed with breast cancer. Like within a week of joining that office, I got diagnosed with breast cancer. And I had found the lump while I was in the training courses. But I knew because those spots were so limited, because those spots were so coveted, and it was so hard for me to be allowed into this career, that I wasn't going to tell anybody. So I didn't tell anybody I found a lump. I didn't go to a doctor, even though deep down I knew with certainty what it was. So once I got to that office and found out I had breast cancer, now I had several really hard decisions to make. How do I tell this male office that I have breast cancer, which is a very, very intimate thing to share? And how do I prove myself to this male field when I'm sick? And I remember that the doctor told me I was going to have chemo, a year of chemotherapy, because of the type of cancer I had was a very aggressive type. And I knew I was going to lose my hair, and I knew I was going to have all sorts of scars. But the thing that scared me the most was having to miss work. So I quickly learned in this office, while trying to go through this doctor and figure out what I needed to do for my diagnosis, that this was the most cutthroat place I could ever imagine. The ratio of men to women at its best of times was maybe 1 to 4, 1 woman to 4 men. But most often it was just 1 or 2 of us, and all males. And the environment was so contentious that the men would sit around and drink whiskey at the end of the days together. They'd smoke cigars together, and they never invited any of the women. The guys would go out to lunch together. They would make jokes in the office about their women, about their conquests. When we would travel for work, so I was traveling maybe 3 or 4 weeks a month. And anytime I would leave the office, the work that I had been doing back at the office was being sabotaged by some of the males that were working in there. I'd come back and find out things that I had gotten approval to do were canceled because these guys were having meetings behind my back, and I would get back to the office and the work that I worked so hard on was gone. So I'm trying to navigate this field of just, it's so hard to explain what it was like in there. It's like you had a bullseye on your back at all times, especially as a female. So while I'm going through, when I started chemo, I had to do a POW, a prisoner of war training event as part of the career. So you go to, you go and you get put into a cage for a while, and they kind of rough you up and show you what it's like to be a prisoner so that you're more prepared if anything should ever happen to you. I did that the day after I was diagnosed with cancer, and I didn't tell them about it because I didn't want these males to pull me from the course, because I knew that they would treat me differently the minute they knew I had cancer. So I probably went through the first couple of months without telling anybody in that office that I was going to go through this. In fact, I didn't tell them until it came time to start doing the chemo, till maybe 1 or 2 treatments in, because I started to lose my hair. And I knew when I started to lose my hair, there was no hiding what I was going through anymore. So I told the office what I was going through, but I promised them, this is not going to change anything. I'm still going to work. I'm still going to travel 3 or 4 weeks every single month, 3 or 4 different trips every single month. I am going to literally kill myself to prove to this office that I was worthy to work here. Because I had worked so damn hard to get there. There was no way I was going to let cancer stop me from proving myself to this group that was already sabotaging me, even at the beginning. So I remember after my second chemo treatment, the very next day I flew to California for work. And I was so sick that that night before my meeting, I had meetings the next day. That night I slept on the floor of the bathroom because I could not get out of the bathroom, and even called the hospital and just said, hey, look, what can I do to prevent myself from having to come into the hospital? Because I have work and I could not call out of work. That was a theme for me. I worked weekends. I worked 18-hour days. I would do anything that I could to prove to these guys that I deserved half of the respect that they were giving each other with absolutely no, just for free. They would give each other respect and love for free. But for the women, it was like a firing squad. Every single day, it was a firing squad that we had to face. So once I finally got through all of that, and the office shifts every 2 years. New people come in and other people go out. So I'd been in the office for about 3 years at this point. Because of my illness, I was allowed to stay in. I had another training course to go to, a 6-month training course. And when I came back from that training course, a lot of the leaders that I had known before had left. The environment when I came back was hostile. Several of the women had gotten pregnant. There's a couple women there, and 2 of them were got pregnant and were having their first children. And somehow these new male leaders thought that this was proof that women shouldn't be allowed in this career field. They would make jokes about women. It's contagious. All the women are getting pregnant. They're all going to quit. Why do we train them if they're just going to get pregnant and leave? The only good female officer is one that can still fit into a bikini. It was shocking how bad it became so quickly. You know, I was gone for 6 months, but I had been in this office for 3 years. And at this point, I had proven myself to be a very good employee. In fact, I had rated at the top of the office several times. They do evals, and I'd always been at the top of the group. So when I came back into this, I wasn't really sure what had happened, what had shifted. It had been bad before. The guys did not particularly embrace the women in the office. But now we're talking like a 1950s office mentality going on in there. One of the new bosses that came in was clearly drinking on the job. He was walking around every morning with this cup of Coke that smelled like rum, and he just flushed face. So I remember that first week back, I was sitting in a meeting, and there's a round table in the center, and I was sitting on the outside of the wall just trying to catch up on what the office had been doing. And this new leader, this drunken leader, kept turning around in his seat, like turning 180 degrees to stare at my legs. And I'm talking to my coworkers. I was like, what's happening here? Why is this guy staring at me like this? What's happened? And they said that's kind of his thing. He was known to be a creeper. And the rumor mill was that he had gotten kicked out of Afghanistan for sexual harassment, and that he had this pattern. So within that week, I had been told I was being transferred over to his team to work for him. Now, I have no idea why. I had no idea at the time why I had been transferred to his team. I kept telling myself, I'm just going to keep this professional. I'm going to make sure I don't give him any reason to suspect that there is any opportunities for him here. All right, I had to be more than careful that he didn't get the wrong idea. And I don't know if anybody else in the audience has experienced this. And if you have, so please give me a shout out. But you have to be more proper than proper, because I didn't want to give him any indication that I was available, that was an option for him. So despite everything that I tried to do to distance myself from this man, within a week, he was coming into my little cubicle and sitting by my desk and just hovering over my shoulder to talk to me. He wanted to go on trips with me because he said now that I was back in the office, since I've been gone for 6 months, he wanted to see how I was, see how I worked. So he was planning trips for us together. And the first trip that we were supposed to take together, and I pushed back. I'm like, you do not need to come with me. I've been doing this job for 3 years. You just got here. You might need some hand-holding. I 100% do not. But he insisted that the only way I was going to get to work is if we traveled together for the first couple of trips. So we went out on a trip together, and he wanted to show me the city. And that was what he said. We were just traveling down to Texas for a meeting, and he's like, let me show you around. I used to live here. I want to show you the city. And in my panic, I'm trying to figure out, how do I get out of this? I'm married. And my husband works in the office with us, but we kept that very quiet because, again, that male dominated field, I didn't want them to know anything about my personal life. I had to be an absolute robot in that office. So I'm trying to figure out how to get out of traveling with this man. How do I make sure that this drunk is not driving me around Texas? So I found little excuses, little ways to just kind of stay out of his bubble throughout the whole trip. And it wasn't contentious. It was just little things. Oh, I'm already traveling we had another coworker with us, luckily. I'm going to go do my own thing and I'll meet up with you guys later. And so I kept making these excuses to stay away from him. But overall, the trip was successful. When I got back from that trip and I went into his office, he had a whiteboard on the side that said all the work that we were assigned, all the things that we were working on, his team, and everything that had been underneath my name was erased. Every single piece of work that I was working on was gone and given to other people to work on. So I asked him, why do I not have work anymore? What's happened between a week ago before we took this trip together and now? And he told me he pulled me out of that work to save me for other things. So I'm not dumb. He was full of it. But I gave it a couple of days to see what would happen. And some of my friends in the office started coming to me and telling me that he was spreading rumors that I needed to be fired because I was a security risk to the office, that I was such a bad employee, I shouldn't be allowed to stay, and that he was petitioning to have me fired from the government. And we had never had any kind of confrontation at this point. All we had done on that trip was me just trying to stay out of his way. So I went to the chief of our office and I told him, I was like, look, here's what's happening. I believe this is a result of me being unwilling to be alone with him on this trip. And I was never rude about it. I never confronted him about it. But it's clear that his intentions towards me were sexual in nature, the way he treated me, the way he touched me, the way he looked at me. And now that I have put a wall here, his treatment towards me has changed. And I no longer have any work. And I need help. I don't know what to do. So the chief of this office told me he would look into it. And he said he was going to keep my complaint anonymous. Well, within an hour, I was getting a call from my husband's boss. My husband was a contractor. So his contract program manager called me on the phone and said he needed to speak to me. So he pulls me outside of our office and he tells me that the chief of our office warned him that if I went forward and complained about this drunk, that they were going to cancel my husband's contract. And he asked me, my husband's boss asked me to keep it quiet and let it go. So I did. I didn't know what else to do at that time to protect him and protect myself. So I went back into the chief's office. I said, look, I won't go forward with this. Just move me back to my original team. I cannot work underneath him. So instead of moving me to another team, the chief created a team of one, and that would be me. And I sat on this team with no work, any work that I'm creative. I will come up with things that I can do. So I was putting forth ideas and proposals. All of them got turned down. And then I noticed my emails started getting tracked. And if I was very careful not to leave my computer unlocked when I left the room, but they would be hovering around my cubicle trying to see on my emails who I was talking to. If I left the office for any reason, as soon as I got back, where'd you go? Who'd you talk to? What were you doing? All of a sudden, my movements were being tracked. And I knew that what they were trying to do is prevent me from going forward and saying something up at our headquarters. So one day I told them I was going out for a doctor's appointment, and I went to our headquarters, and I had an old boss in there, and I went to him and told him what was happening. I was like, I am trapped. I am trapped. The bosses in the office, there's 4 or 5 different males at the head of this office. They had banded together to silence me, to mistreat me. They were mistreating me in emails. They were saying horrible things about me in emails. They would be disrespectful to me in meetings. I even had one coworker come up to me whose office was right next to the boss's office. They shared a wall, and he told me, you need to get out of here. They're planning something against you. So I went to headquarters and I told this mentor of mine what was happening. I was like, I cannot go forward and complain because they will cancel my husband's contract. What do I do? So he said I could file an anonymous complaint to have the leadership study to see the environment of the office. So that's what I did. Within a week of that anonymous complaint, all of the leaders in that office had been warned that I had filed a complaint. In fact, it was called Chris's complaint because the investigator that they assigned to look into my case was a friend of theirs. They were buddies. They were drinking buddies. So he immediately went down and warned them what I was saying and what I was doing. So the environment in that office got so hostile so fast that my husband convinced me just to come in on a Saturday, pack up all my stuff, and show up at headquarters the next day and never go back into that office because it was just so hostile. They were having meetings behind closed doors. I could hear them screaming about me. I could hear them talking about me. My friends in the office were too scared to talk to me anymore because they knew that now I was toxic for them to know. So when I went to headquarters, they put me in some admin position. And within a month, they had gone through 2 other investigators because I complained about the one investigator. I found proof that he had written and warned my old bosses that this was coming down the pipeline. And not only did he warn them that I had filed a complaint, he wrote in an email to get the liquor out of the office. That was one of his bullets on the email, make sure all the liquor is out of the office because these men were drinking in the office. So 2 investigators later, because the second one got fired, I still don't know why. I have no idea why. A 3rd investigation gets started. I have to tell my story to multiple different people. And each and every time I tell my story, I imagine it's very much what like a rape victim feels, that re-victimization. What did you do? What did you do wrong? What were you wearing? Why was he looking at your legs? Why do you think he was looking at your legs? Why was he leaning towards you? Did you invite him into the cubicle with you? Did you offer to go on the trip with him? Why wasn't it safe for you to drive with him? It was all my fault. It was all in my head. And they kept trying to convince me of this. So when I wouldn't budge, and this is maybe 3 months into this process, this leadership study, and I still wouldn't back down, all of a sudden a no notice deployment came on my desk. And the deployment asked me to waive my right to training and go out on a deployment within the next couple of weeks. So I had to push back again. I said, I will go on this 100% why you're doing this. So the slot for that deployment was to that old office that I had left. It was their body to fill, and they recommended me. Now, how they could legally do this, I absolutely can't tell you. But I pushed back on the training. I said, you are not sending me out to Afghanistan without training. It's not happening. So push back my arrival date. I will go through all the training that you give me, and I just want to get the hell out of here for a while. So I did. I went through the training. I went to Afghanistan. While I was in Afghanistan, when I first touched down on the ground, I was supposed to be joining somebody's team because it was my first deployment to Afghanistan. I had never been there before. But instead of joining this other person's team, they put me in charge of a team. So all of a sudden, I'm a leader of a group, and they send me out on my own, first deployment. I hit the tarmac up at my base, and nobody's there to pick me up. It is 3 o'clock in the morning. It is pitch black. All I see is 2 Afghan guards, and I'm just sitting there on the tarmac, hoping somebody will come pick me up because I have absolutely no idea where to go. During the deployment, it became really clear that the former supervisor who was in there that I was taking over for did not care about the job. He had liquor stored all over the place. I had to fire one of the team members because they were drinking and doing all this other great stuff. One of the people that I had to fire to get out of there filed complaints against all the leadership that was out there in Afghanistan, myself included. Now, the Army looked into the investigations and dismissed them all. They were crap. But somehow my home headquarters, and I wasn't on a deployment for them, I was with the Army. My home headquarters had heard that there was an investigation filed against me, and they decided to pick it up on their own and reinvestigate me, just me, none of the other people that were in there, even though several of them worked for the same headquarters. They assigned a woman to question me on whether I was buying drugs on the local Afghan market, whether I was hiding men in my bookshelf was one of the accusations. What was the other one? Trying to lure people in with sex, dressing inappropriately at the gym. And not only did this woman, this new investigator, question me about my moral habits, but she talked to the ambassador that I was working with. She talked to the commander of the base that I was working on. She talked to everybody in my chain of command. Anybody I came into kind of contact with was asked about my promiscuity, my dress, my speech, my drinking and drug use. And this happened so fast that I had absolutely no preparation for this at all. I wrote back to headquarters and said, somebody please help me. I'm being investigated for something that's already been dismissed because it was false. And not only have you opened this investigation up yourselves, but you're ruining my reputation out here. I'm trying to work. I'm deployed and nobody's helping me. Like, you owe me a lawyer. They tried to make me sign away my rights to a lawyer. That was one of the things that the investigator asked me to sign, was a waiver so that I would never go forward with a lawyer. And I spoke to the boss on the phone and I said, you have to help me. Tell me who filed this. Where is this coming from? Why is this happening? And his words to me were, I cannot help you. And I've been told not to mention your name at headquarters again. So at this same time, my original investigation was finalized. It was ending, and I hadn't been tracking this, and they found all the leaders guilty of everything that I'd said, minus the sexual harassment. They could not prove the sexual harassment. So all the leaders were not getting fired. They were getting moved to different leadership positions, because that's how the government works. We call it move them on and move them up. So if you are a bad employee, you're going to get promoted and you're going to get moved to another location. So that's what they were doing with these men. But they had so many supporters. They had such a network, which we call the good old boy system, that somewhere in that chain, they had agreed that I needed to be targeted. I was the whistleblower. I was the one who did this to them, and I deserved to be punished. So they opened this investigation while I was deployed, knowing there was literally nothing I could do about it. There was nothing I could do to stop it, and nobody back at headquarters was willing to help me. I was death to a reputation to be around, all because I'd come forward to say this guy wanted to be alone with me, and I said no. So when I got back from that deployment, my next assignment was gone. I had had a follow-on assignment that I was supposed to do, and they took it away from me. They put me at an admin position in headquarters. They would not talk to me. It got so bad that I was crying on the way to work every day, and I was crying on the way home every day. I would blare Katy Perry's Roar song on the way to work every single day just to get me in the door, because it was so miserable. And now I'm back at headquarters, and all of those men that had been removed from their positions because of me are at headquarters with me. And even though all the investigations came back as founded, and I saw a copy of it, no punitive damages were given to any of them. None of them were even reprimanded in writing, and all of them were still given end of the year bonus money. My eval reflected that I had been a whistleblower. I had gotten advancements in pay every year because I was such a good employee, except for that year. That was the first year that I was not given any bonus. But they were all given bonuses, and now they were back in leadership positions. So I did the only thing that I could think of at that time, and I threw a Hail Mary. I wrote down everything that I had experienced while working for DOD. I wrote down about a boss that had licked me on the face, another who had asked me if I liked being spanked, about the drunk. These are all different people. I wrote everything down, everything that I had to face in deployment, all the grief that I had felt, how I could not go forward to complain about this. I'd been threatened not to complain. And I sent this 5-page letter to the general of the Department of Defense. Sent it to him directly. I knew his email address. I did not pass go. I did not let anybody know I was doing it. And I sent it to his desk with my resignation letter at the end, just to get out. I needed to drop a bomb in that place before I left, just to get something to happen. And all that happens was they started a new investigation, because now the general's involved and he wants to find out what's happening. And they tried to get me not to leave. And I stood by it. I said, I'm out. I cannot do this. You guys you're killing me. You're killing my soul. I cannot do this. And I had worked so hard to get to this place in my career. I mean, I was 15 years into my career at this point. And everything I had done in the military, everything I'd done in the government was to get to this career that I loved and that I was good at. But I couldn't do it anymore. I was actively being stopped from doing it. It was just too hard. So I sent in my resignation letter and resigned from the department. As soon as I got out, my husband's contract was coming up for rebid. And as soon as his company won, I felt it was finally safe for me to go forward with a formal complaint. So I got a lawyer. and I had the lawyer submit my complaint to the Department of Defense for punitive damages. Just all I asked for was for them to cover my salary for a couple of months so I could find a new job. Now, the Department of Defense's strategy against lawyers is clever. Their strategy to deal with complaining employees is to not answer the phone. My lawyer could not get the Department of Defense on the phone for months. For months. They never returned any of her messages. I requested the investigations that the general had done, as well as the original investigation. You can submit requests for the investigation. They're supposed to answer those requests within 30 days. It's been over 6 years and I still have not gotten those investigations. Eventually, with my lawyer, I could no longer afford for her to continue to chase down the Department of Defense to get them to speak to her. The only message she ever got was one saying that my statute of limitations, which is 30 days to complain, had expired. And even though I claimed that they had threatened my husband's contract, that was not good enough reason for me not to have submitted my complaint within 30 days. And thus I had absolutely no power to get justice in my case at all. If I had filed within 30 days of the original one, this was before I even deployed. And since I did not file a complaint before I deployed because I was scared for my husband's contract, I had no legal recourse anymore. And the Whistleblower Act that the government passed to protect people coming forward with information about the government did not apply to the Department of Defense. We are not protected by the Whistleblower Act. So everything that I had learned and gone through was for nothing. I lost a 15-year career in the span of 6 months. And I had absolutely no legal recourse at all to help me. So the irony of the story, not irony, the reason that I'm sharing this with you is multifold. One, I have never shared this before. And I know there's a lot of other women in the government, in the military that are going through this. I've met you. I've met some of you. I've spoken to more. I know I am absolutely not alone in having suffered in that way. So it was important for me to share this, to let you know what's going on behind the curtain of the government. It is a good old boy system. It is an incredibly difficult place for people to navigate. And the system, the EO system, equal opportunity system, that's set up to protect people is there to protect the government. It's not there to protect the individual. And that was a very, very hard lesson that I had to learn. So coming out of that and having to transition to find a new career was difficult because this reputation had followed me. It had followed me for a very long time, and I would apply for jobs, and the rumor that I was a wave maker, a boat shaker, whatever crazy little analogy you want to use, that word was out there that I had fought back against the good old boy system, and they have a long, long reach. So I have not gone back into my career, and I never will. I had to give that up. Years of training. And at that time, that was my dream. It was my dream to get to that spot. And I did. I did get there, and I was very, very good at it. So what it forced me to do was to figure out why this had happened. What was I supposed to, I'm a spiritual person. I know that things happen for a reason. And it is so hard when you're drowning to see the reason behind what's happening to you. I knew that these things had happened to shift me in some way, shape, or form. So what I had to do was really reverse engineer my spiritual process by using the gift that the military had given me, and that was to plan and to analyze events. I used all my wonderful military training to really go through that event and say, what did I take away from this? What was it that I need to learn to be stronger from this? What is it about this experience that I needed to go through? And some days I don't know if I could tell you the answer to that, because it was so much pain for so long. But what I learned from my experiences with that was that I had the ability to stand up for what I felt was right, even if I knew it was going to destroy me. And I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I was martyring myself when I sent that letter to the general. I knew I might never work again in that world, because that was such a big, it was such an FU to the government to do that. But I knew that I had the strength to withstand it. I knew that I had the strength to do what was right, even though it was going to hurt. I knew that I could survive it. And I knew that I was going to find a way to land on my feet. So it really forced me to look at all my skills and pull all of these things apart to see who and what I was underneath. Because I had identified so heavily with my job. It was my identity. And all of a sudden it was gone. So I had to really take a step back and shine a spotlight on this spiritual side of me that I had never given a lot of attention to, because it was not that important to me at that time. So it was important, but it wasn't my focus. I had to prove myself in this world of soldiers. So now I had to pull back and say, okay, who am I without this? Who am I without that label of a warrior, of a provider, of a protector, so I was no longer serving my country. So what I did was I found a way to follow the breadcrumbs that the universe had left for me. I was able to find the pieces of my life where I had been the strongest. I was able to look at the hobbies that I had that gave me the most joy. I was able to look at the painful events in my life and see the patterns that they had created. And each pattern showed me a lesson that I was trying to learn. So the fact that I constantly ended up butting my heads against this good old boy system was a huge lesson that I had to learn. What was it about working with men as a female did I need to learn? And I'll tell you what I learned here. I learned that I was worthy. I was worthy without all of the work. I was worthy without having to put in twice as much effort as the men. I was worthy to be respected. I was worthy of love. I was worthy to be there. And nothing they could say or do was going to take away that worth. And I did not know that at the time. It took me a long time after that event to look back on my story and say, I went through all of this, and now I know I was worthy. I was worthy to be there. I am proud of the strength that I was able to have in that situation. I am grateful that the universe gave me the opportunity to take care of myself, to embrace myself, to learn how really strong I was. The universe has created all of us for a very specific reason. And the things that we go through in life are a major part of this puzzle that is us. puzzle pieces that will add up to who you are as a divine being. And those experiences are a very important part of who I am and who you are, but they're not the only part. There's other parts of this puzzle that I had to add in and bring in to come to one realization that has completely changed my life. And that is, I am who I was meant to be. I came into this world for a purpose. And every single step, everything I have been through, all of the pain, the tears, the blood, they formed me to be the person I was meant to be. So what I offer now and what I've done with this experience is I have found a way to see the intention behind the pain. There's a purpose to why you're here on this planet. There's purpose to why you were attracted to this video. And I went so much longer than I meant to, so I really apologize. It's a long story. It was the first time I shared it. I had no idea how long that was going to take. There is a very simple but elegant is the word that pops into my head. God bless spirit. They're very eloquent. There is a very eloquent pattern to each and every person that's watching this and each and every person that hears about this. And I have found a way through my experiences in the military, through my deployments, through that pain with the good old boy system, through my cancer, through the abusive mother. I've taken all those experiences and found a way to discover my truth. So what I'm offering and why I share this story today is one, so that you can witness what it's like to purge yourself with a story, how you can look at a story and see the intention behind why that happened to you, but also to offer up a 3-month masterclass that I'll be doing in February. I'm taking all of my experiences, my methodologies that I learned in the military, and I'm offering that up to people who are interested in discovering their own truth. Now, this is for people who are really willing to dive deep into the pain of what they have gone into, and you will only get out as what you put in. But this class will help you discover who you are, discover who you were meant to be, who you chose to be when you came into this world. Discover your life purpose. What is it that you're meant to be doing? And then help you get into that place where now you are your own creator. You are creating a life of joy and love. And I know I can do these things to help you. I know I can be a mentor for you because I've done it for myself. I've had much, much help along the way. And I know Amanda and Emily are both watching, and you guys are wonderful, wonderful mentors. I've gotten to a place where I'm co-creating my own life. After all of that pain, after all of those just horrific moments, I have gotten to a place where I am living joy. I am free from the pain of those events. Even though I might still get sad about them when I talk about them, I'm free from the emotional pull that made me feel that that was a part of who I was, that I was somehow responsible, that I was unworthy, that darkness needed to sit on my shoulder. It doesn't. It helped to forge me like a piece of steel, but it doesn't define me. So what I'm offering is a 3-month course. It's $2,700, and we're going to meet twice a month. Payment options, payment plans are available. But I want you to really ask yourself if you're ready to live your highest truth. Are you ready to heal with your stories? Are you willing to take the next step in your soul journey to really find out and embrace who you are? To embrace the divine creature that you are. Now, if you're thinking you don't have the time, or you don't have the money, or you don't have the energy to dig into that pain, ignore it. Those voices are not your truth. The truth is, we're all here for a reason. I went through all of that, and that was just one story. I got lots of them. I went through all of that so that I would be able to turn around and help other people who are going through pain and who are going through these struggles. I had to experience these things for myself so that I could help other people go through them and release them. Now, I know I have been talking for a very, very long time. I just want you all to know that when you feel that you're alone, when you feel that the world is at its darkest part and you're just being sucked down underneath the water, you are never alone. The universe has a reason and a purpose to everything that it's doing. And I want to work with you to help you find that purpose. So if this is something you're interested in, please contact me on Messenger or check me out on my website and send me an email and get on my book to we'll have a call together and we'll see if this program is right for you. There are limited spaces, so please be aware of that. I can only take so many students at a time, but I would love the opportunity to help others the way that I have been helped. So if that resonates with you, please reach out to me. Now, before I wrap up this circle, and this has been such a freeing experience for me sharing this with y'all, and I hope you can feel that. It gave me chills to release that. When I say that was I've been teaching on Awake TV, and I've been sharing so much information that I've gotten, but there was a piece of myself that I always held back, and it was this piece. And I held it back because I didn't want to be judged. I don't want to re-victimize myself. And it's so hard to talk badly about the government when it's something that meant so much to me. But hopefully somebody will hear this story. Maybe some other women in the Air Force or in the government or any other branch of the military. And let me tell you, you're not alone spiritually or physically. I am 100% here if you guys just want to talk about it. If you need someone to turn to share your story with, please reach out to me. Now, for the folks that are watching this live, thank you again so much for being here. I would love to hear if this brought up any memories for you, or if you have any situations that this reminded you of and you were able to release through this story. If you are, please let me know in the chat room. I would love to, even if you just say a hell yeah, I would love to hear what resonated with you while watching that. And Kim, thank you so much for all your sweet comments. Kim Tagut is an absolute angel. And we're doing a Goddess Calling show together that will air on January 11th at 11 o'clock Pacific, the full moon. It's all about being a divine feminine creature in today's world. And that'll be on Awake TV. Hell yes. Thank you, Kim. Thank you. Anybody else? Oh, is my sister on here? Emmy, are you in here? No, I can't see. Thank you all again so much for watching. The purpose of all this, and the last thing I want to wrap up with everybody is I want you to imagine a life where you're just free to be you. That everything that happens, even the painful stuff, you understand and you embrace as an opportunity. Because that's all it is. It's an opportunity from the universe to grow, to learn, to expand. And Earth is the only place in the universe to do that. We all came here with a mission. And we get so lost and so sucked down in the mire of it that we kind of miss it. I can help you find that. And together we can ascend. Because with every time a light worker shifts up, the whole world goes with them. So thank you guys so much for listening. I hope my story resonated. I hope you got something out of it. Thank you so much for all the Awake TV teachers that are here. You guys are absolutely amazing. And some of my first female friends, so high five on that one. And to my sister and all of my other friends and family that are in here, bless you. You guys are absolutely wonderful. I love you all. Thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.